The protests on the U.S. Canada border. The Ambassador Bridge, which we've been telling you about, connecting the U.S. and Canada, finally reopened overnight after protesters were cleared out over the weekend. I'm joined now by CTV reporter Glenn McGregor from Ottawa. Glenn, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. First off, Glenn, can you give us an update on what you're seeing there?
Well, this is the 17th day of this occupation of Ottawa, and the protesters are not going anywhere. They say they are going to stay until all the COVID measures that they are protesting against have been scrapped, even though the federal government, which is the seat of power here in Ottawa, doesn't have control over a lot of them. But you can see on the road behind me, this is the main street that runs in front of the Parliament buildings, the seat of our legislature, kind of like our Capitol Hill. And the brown building over my shoulder, on my right shoulder, is the Prime Minister's office. And out in front there the protesters have set up hot tubs. They have bouncy castles for the children. They have Jumbotron. They have dance parties. They are completely entrenched here, and they are continuing to refuel by bringing in by hand jerry cans filled with diesel. And the police said they were going to stop that to try and as a way of dealing with the protests, to keep them from running their trucks overnight, because it's very cold here and they got to keep those engines running to stay warm, but they haven't done it. So there's an enormous amount of frustration here in this city about the inaction by the police. We're hearing this morning our Prime Minister is now in a meeting with the provincial premiers across the country, a virtual meeting, and we're expecting him to enact something called the Emergencies Act. That's going to give federal police more power to act and possibly move in against this protest. But I've got to tell you, Phil, people in this city are frightened, fed up. We've had reports of people being harassed on the street, being told to take off their masks. The streets are clogged with diesel fumes, and the horns continue to blow periodically. In the first week of this protest, we heard the truckers blowing their horns very loudly, regularly. It was driving the residents who live close to here absolutely crazy. And it took one person, a 21-year-old woman, to go to court, launch a private lawsuit to get an injunction to stop them. That injunction hasn't been entirely observed. So it's kind of like, Phil, people compare it to an NFL tailgate party meets Mad Max. And that's really kind of the vibe here.
Yeah, in 7-degree temperatures, we understand right now. Glenn, back to that Emergencies Act. How would that, if enacted, how would that affect the trucker convoy?
Well, we're trying to get some understanding of exactly how that would do it. What we know is it is not does not empower the federal government to call in the Canadian Armed Forces, the military, to act in a law enforcement role. That's a further step that the government is not yet taking. There's been a lot of calls on the Prime Minister to do that because the police here in Ottawa are substantially outnumbered, and they just don't feel like they can act and move in on these big rigs here that are camped on Parliament Hill. And one of the reasons that they're also nervous, Phil, is that they estimate about 25% of the trucks that are up here have children living in them. A lot of these protesters have brought their kids with them. It's a very buoyant, joyful atmosphere that they are enjoying, especially on the weekends when the protesters' numbers swell. But their other concern, of course, is that they think some of these trucks might have firearms in them, and they're very worried about this becoming a violent confrontation. And then we just heard this morning that at a satellite protest happening in Alberta, at a place called Coots, which is just on the Canadian-U.S. border that connects Alberta to Montana, there have been protests going over there for the last week or two, and police this morning saying that they have found a cache of something like 13 long guns, ammunition, body armor in one of the trailers. That's very disturbing, and that suggests that there's something going on here that is much darker than just kind of frustration in general with COVID control measures.
Yeah, that's disturbing indeed. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, Glenn, announced changes to the province's pandemic restrictions while also saying that those who continue to protest in Ottawa will lose their license and possibly their vehicles indefinitely. How important is that?
Yeah, that's a big step, but I mean, it is following kind of the lead that other countries in Europe have started to roll back some of their COVID measures until, well, currently right now to go into a bar or restaurant in Ontario, you need to show your vaccination passport. We also have a mask mandate indoor. We have some gathering limits in place. He's easing those all back. They're going to get rid of the vaccination passport on the 1st of March, so a little under 2 weeks from now. And that is, one of the things that this movement has demanded is getting rid of all these things. But the Premier, Doug Ford, very careful to say that this is something that was based on science, this decision. They've been working on this for weeks and saying very emphatically that it is not a response to the pressure that's being put on this city, on this province, on the Canadian economy because of the shutdown of the Ambassador Bridge between Windsor, Ontario and Detroit, Michigan. That has been absolutely crippling to our auto sector. But he wants to make it very clear, yeah, they were going to do this anyway, and they are not doing this because their hand was forced by these protests, Phil.
We're obviously, Glenn, reporting on this from an American perspective. You touched on it briefly, but as a Canadian, how is the country reacting to these demonstrations as they keep dragging on? How much support is there?
I'm stunned. People just can't believe they're seeing this. I mean, Canadians, are generally kind of much more centrist in their politics than Americans, and a lot of people watch with puzzlement what the things that have been going on in the United States over the past 6 or 7 years, the rise of the MAGA movement. We didn't think that would ever happen here in Canada, but we're seeing clearly evident on our streets that there is still a constituency in Canada for those kinds of politics, and it's been a real wake-up for a lot of people because we always thought we were such a kind and gentle nation that we didn't think we would have this kind of viewpoint within us, and we also, no one ever possibly anticipated that the people who are supporting this could shut down a major metropolitan city. Over 1 million people live here in Ottawa. It's a capital of a G7 country, and the police seem to be completely impotent. They can't act. They don't have the resources. They don't seem to have the will. There's even some suggestion that some law enforcement officers and some people in the Canadian forces are supportive of this movement, and it's caused a lot of doubt, lack of trust in the civic institutions, not just municipally, but provincially and federally too. It has been an alarming experience for a lot of Canadians who've never seen really anything like this.
Yeah, a lot of norms being shattered here in 2022. Glenn McGregor from CTV, thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.